Welcome to Not Entirely Unlike Tea with Christine Collins. Hey there, it's Christine Collins, and sometimes we hear this question asked of us, and in moments it may feel like an unanswerable question, and that question is, what do you do? It's a very common conversation starter, especially in places where small talk is happening, and particularly in places that are more career-oriented or business-focused. For a lot of people, there's just a quick answer that will just slip off their tongue and they'll just say the same thing every time. For entrepreneurs, it's often expected that you'll have some kind of little elevator pitch that you present when meeting new people as far as what your business is or what type of work you do. And this can be particularly confounding for people who are multi-passionate, who are neurodivergent, or who happen to fall into various other categories of things like people who operate outside of traditional employment structures, stay-at-home parents, caregivers, people with disabilities, people who are between roles, or people who do multiple different types of things. And it also kind of forms an assumption, just in asking this question, that who you are is directly connected to the type of work that you do or a job or role that you hold. This can get extra messy when you used to have a particular role or title and no longer do, and it formed a part of your identity. It can be very challenging to decide how to describe yourself. And in terms of our identity, our brains actually process different aspects of that identity through different neural networks in the medial prefrontal cortex. So sometimes forcing ourselves to compress that identity into a single label can give us some cognitive dissonance, particularly if you do wear multiple hats or fall into one of those categories that we mentioned. And for entrepreneurs, the very personality traits that tend to draw people into entrepreneurship, such as creativity, innovation, big picture thinking, and being multi-passionate, are often associated with neurodivergent thinking patterns, which make this oversimplification of identity especially difficult. Many entrepreneurs, whether they are neurodivergent and share traits with ADHD and autism, may struggle with rigid categorization. They may have a resistance to oversimplification, and also they may just have a tendency to think in interconnected systems rather than a linear job description. So when someone asks that question, what do you do? That entrepreneurial, potentially neurodivergent brain may actually freeze up a little bit, trying to activate these multiple neural pathways simultaneously, and a concise, simple answer may actually be very challenging. And that can lead to what neuroscientists call analysis paralysis, where parts of the prefrontal cortex become overactivated trying to determine which of many possible answers is quote-unquote correct in this particular social context, and this can lead to anxiety or even freezing up. And what's interesting about that is that the same individual who may struggle to answer this question can separately speak very confidently and at length about a particular interest if asked. And that's because special interests activate different neural pathways, particularly the brain's reward centers, like the nucleus accumbens. And when discussing passions, fMRI studies show increased dopamine activity, which helps to improve communication flow and reduce social anxiety. So asking a more pertinent or relevant question, such as showing an understanding of some area that that person is interested in, asking them about a specific one of their multi-passions, or even something that's unrelated to how they generate income, like a hobby or a passion or a special interest that's not related to their work. For example, someone may really love animals or a particular animal and know a lot about them, or there may be some other special topic that they've researched endlessly that has absolutely nothing to do with what they do for quote-unquote work. And if we are the person being asked, in terms of navigating this question, what do? You can take a couple of different approaches. So first off, it can be helpful to have a simplified answer for some social contexts where you're not looking for a deep connection. You're at the doctor's office, you're getting a dental appointment, and the dentist is about to stick their fingers in your mouth, and it's not a great time for elaboration. So having a quick, short answer or a little script for yourself that you can sort of upload in the moment can help to alleviate the stress and anxiety of trying to figure out how to answer that question and reduce the cognitive load. Preparing that ahead of time for multiple different scenarios where you don't want to get into any great detail with the person can be very useful. However, when we are in other settings, such as networking settings where we're actually looking to foster connection and build new relationships with our peers or future potential clients, or moments of facilitating new friendships, we may want to have a little bit better, more in-depth response. So some people like to have their elevator pitch prepared. They may like to have a phrase or something that they say frequently. Sometimes it can come across as being very scripted. At the same time, by not having any script or preparation, we can find ourselves getting pulled into that freeze or stuck mode where we actually can't think of anything to say because we're not sure how to respond to the question. So having some amount of phrases prepared can be a bit useful, but we can also choose phrases that are less typical and that offer a little bit more insight into who we are in addition to what we do. And perhaps embedding something that you are passionate about into that answer may allow for that conversation to continue in a way that will be different than if you just simply say, I am blank title or role, or I do this particular type of service or product. Adding in an element that ties into your multi-passion, or even explaining that you're multi-passionate and allowing that to be questioned and to unfold further. Or even adding in one of those special interests that is not related to your work allows the other person to have something deeper to ask about to get to know you better. We can also be a better questioner when we find ourselves in these scenarios. Instead of asking other people what do they do, we can have better questions that will more stimulate some of these deeper and more interesting types of conversation, such as asking someone, what are you curious about lately? Or what are some things that you've been learning that you're really excited about? As most entrepreneurs tend to find themselves constantly learning different things, whether it's for their business or unrelated. What are some things that you've enjoyed doing recently? What are some topics that you could talk about for hours? And you may be really fascinated and surprised by how that question is answered, as it may not have anything to do with their business or work specifically. And these types of questions and conversations allow for deeper, more authentic connection, and particularly valuable for neurodivergent entrepreneurs to be able to share from areas of confidence and passion rather than struggling with some form of artificial self-definition or identity. And so if you find yourself freezing up when you're asked, what do you do? This is in no way a failure on your part to have that perfect elevator pitch ready to present. It's simply your own brain recognizing that your identity is far more complex than a job title or simple answer. And then when you're doing the asking, you can consider whether you're genuinely curious about that other person, or if you want to keep things more surface level, and there are certainly many scenarios where that is perfectly appropriate to do. But in evaluating some of this outside of the situation sort of ahead of time, you may find yourself capable of having much better, deeper, more connecting conversations. And if you are interested in building your confidence and developing feeling a stronger sense of identity and ability to connect, you may enjoy trying some of the hypnosis audios that are specifically centered around those topics. We have some for things like performance anxiety, social connection, creativity, and you can find all of that in my Hypno-Pothecary, my mindset membership, all of which the information is available in the show notes. And until we connect the next time, I wish you the most magical and creative rest of your day. Thanks for listening. This is Christine Collins at transformcreate.com.